I think Gregg's in a really, we're talking about Gregg Berhalter, obviously, is in a really interesting position right now because, while there might be a tendency to kind of strut back in, I think he recognizes that he has some work to do, and he has some work to do to, I don't know if it's regain, maybe for some it's just establish a credibility and a belief and a confidence from people that don't think that he is necessarily the right person to take this forward. And so, and you see it, and look, again, Twitter is not life, but there certainly are those that would look at this game tonight and say, oh, well, Gio Reyna, why didn't he start during the World Cup? And that's what should have been done. And this is obviously proof that Gregg Berhalter has no idea what he's doing, or Chris Richards, or blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. And that's an easy game to play. And it's not necessarily unfair to do something like that. But it's a long way of saying that I think Gregg Berhalter has to come in and re-examine the way that he thinks about these players and this team. And yes, it's a continuation. And yes, U.S. Soccer Federation and Matt Crocker have talked about wanting to continue the work that got started. But there has to be a definitive type of evolution and change that we can all feel. It's palpable, and that we can actually see on the field in terms of the players that are out there, what ultimately happens. Because otherwise, if it's just a rehashing, and the U.S. is, if you see the way they've talked about it, optics are important, right? The way when they've gotten up in front of the public, the way they've talked about it is, this is not business as usual. I don't know ultimately how that manifests and how it changes, but the way I would think it would is that it's a continuation, yes, in terms of the young players that Gregg Berhalter has have, but you want to see, and I want to see, I think everybody wants to see that progress so that ultimately it's not the same team. I don't think it can be the same team, but Gregg has to evolve also. And I think he would be the first person to tell you that he can evolve, and maybe it's easier to evolve now. Obviously, he has the job, but also that this generation is growing forward. When I throw the question back to you, what are you hoping to see from this team going forward in the next 3 years that maybe you didn't see and are concerned that you are not going to see from a Gregg Berhalter-led national team? I'm asking you, John.
Yeah, I want to see these player relationships get repaired. These ones that, we heard a lot about during the World Cup. I want to see that there can be, repairing done of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, listen, I talked on air today when we were doing the UEFA Nations League, and Landon Donovan was one of our guests, and we talked about the Gregg Berhalter situation, and I talked about how I think that as a country, we are forgiving. We don't forget, but we can forgive. And as I said on air, there were a lot of mistakes that were made, and the price was paid by a lot of people out there. But I do believe that Gregg Berhalter, and he alluded to it to a certain extent in his press conference, recognizes that there are bridges to be built and to be mended. And whether it's with Gio Reyna or, even Pollyanna, I know if it's the Berhalters as a family and the Reynas as a family, I don't want the Reynas to be pariahs out there. I want them to still be involved. And I do say it is, even though it's huge, it is, and at times dysfunctional, American soccer is a family. And I think we can all look at this and say, yeah, you can hold grudges forever, and you can, dig your heels in. But life's too short. And from a practical perspective for Gregg Berhalter, I mean, you can look at tonight, and not even tonight, but you recognize that Gio Reyna, had all of this stuff not occurred, he would have absolutely been part of the plans, and he is going to be part of the plans. And so you're going to have to find a way to repair that dynamic to the extent that you can. It's never going to be the same, but to repair it so that it is workable, because you're going to need him. He is going to be important going forward. And as I said before, to the point where he trusts you and recognizes that if and when he's starting, it's because you have earned it and you believe that he's going to help you win. And if and when you're not starting, or you're not getting called in or whatever, it's not because of all that happened before. I don't know how long that takes, but the sooner they get to a point where it is workable, both on the field in terms of that relationship between player coach, and hopefully, and I know sometimes maybe it's this, this is never going to happen, but maybe even off the field where there can be a simmering of all of this craziness that has gone on. I don't know if that's ultimately going to happen, my friend, but I hope that it does.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.